When I died on Earth, I expected to see a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe heaven, maybe nothingness. Instead, I awoke inside a cramped shell, surrounded by sticky darkness and strange warmth. First, I thought it was a dream. Then I heard the beating of a massive heart. Only a few hours later did I realize the truth. I was inside an egg. The panic did not last long. The air was running out. Instinct proved stronger than reason. I began smashing my head against the walls of my prison. The shell cracked. Cold air struck my face. I was born. The first thing I saw was the stone vaults of a gigantic cavern. The second was an enormous dragoness looking down at me. The third was the realization that I was different from the others. For more hatchlings lay nearby. Even as newborns, they looked majestic. Their scales gleamed, their wings were perfectly formed, and power shone in their eyes. I, on the other hand, looked like nature's failed joke. Fat belly, short legs, a strange snout. Even the other hatchlings stared at me in confusion. Is he really a dragon? Maybe he was switched? What a freak. I wanted to snap back, but then I realized something even stranger. I understood their language. The world changed completely. The following days were the happiest I had known in a very long time. The dragoness fed us, warmed us beneath her body, and guarded the cave. To the others, I was an outsider. To her, I was simply another child. For the first time in 2 lives, I felt like part of a family. I knew it would not last. The dungeon did not look like a safe place. Monsters roamed beyond the cave. Sometimes we heard their roars and smelled blood. Sometimes our mother returned wounded. Yet every time she lay beside us and pretended everything was fine. Back then, I did not understand the price of that smile. A week passed. I grew faster than any ordinary creature. With growth came understanding. This was a dungeon, a multi-layered world of monsters, a place governed by levels, a place where the strong devoured the weak, a place where nobody saved failures. One day, our mother left to hunt and returned earlier than usual. Too quiet, too tense. She placed us in the far corner of the cave. Then she blocked the entrance with her body. I heard footsteps, heavy, slow, confident. A gigantic beast appeared, red fur, monstrous fangs, the eyes of a killer. Mother did not retreat a single step. She knew she would lose. I understood it immediately, yet she moved forward anyway. The battle did not last long. The cave shook. Blood flooded the stone. The roars were deafening. I watched her rise again and again after every blow. For us, for her children. At one moment she turned her head. Our eyes met, and I understood. She had already made her decision. She did not intend to survive. She intended to buy us time. Her final strike tore open the beast's chest, but she received a mortal wound as well. The monster fell first. Mother collapsed a moment later. Silence covered the cave. We rushed to her. She could no longer rise. The other hatchlings cried. So did I. Even though I had long considered myself an adult. Before she died, she looked at us. Without fear, without regret, with warmth, as if she were saying, "Live." A few minutes later, her heart stopped. That day, my childhood ended. We were alone. It quickly became clear that we would not survive long without her. The smell of blood spread through the tunnels. Predators were already sensing prey. I made the first decision. We had to leave. The others did not want to. They still hoped Mother would wake up, but the dungeon knew no miracles, only death. A few hours later, the first scavengers arrived. Then more. We ran. Not everyone escaped. One hatchling died almost immediately. 2 more were lost in the maze of tunnels. By the end of the day, only 2 of us remained. Me and the youngest. We hid among the rocks, starved, drank filthy water. Every day became a struggle for survival, but even that proved temporary. On the 5th day, we were found. The monster was too strong. I knew it at once. We could not win. We could not run. We could not hide. Then the youngest did the same thing our mother once had. He distracted the enemy. I shouted for him to stop, but he was already charging forward. The last member of my new family died before my eyes. Something broke inside me, and at the same time, something was born. I no longer wanted to merely survive. I wanted strength. Enough strength that I would never again watch those close to me die. That evening, I saw the system window for the first time. Level, attributes, skills, evolution paths. Most people would have been terrified. I smiled, because at last I could see a path forward. If this world respected only strength, then I would become the strongest. If the dungeon demanded monsters, then I would learn to be a monster. But inside, I swore to preserve one thing: the memory of those who saved me. My mother, my brothers, the family I found too late. That was how my journey began. Not the path of a hero, not the path of a savior, not the path of the chosen one, the path of the rejected. After the death of my adoptive family, I stopped counting the days. In the dungeon, time had no meaning. Only hunger, fear, and strength existed here. Every morning I woke with one thought: survive one more day. Every evening I fell asleep with another: become stronger. Weeks passed, then months. I hunted everything I could defeat. I hid from everything I could not. The system gradually became part of my life. My levels increased. New skills unlocked. My body changed, but inside, I remained the same person who had once lived on Earth. That was why one dream never left me: to reach the surface, to see the sun, to see people, to see the real world. One day I heard a word that changed everything. Human. A monster said it by accident. Just one word, but I clung to it like a drowning man to a lifeline. If humans existed, then an exit existed. If an exit existed, then I could leave this place. From that day on, the search became my primary goal. I followed tracks, bones, and the remains of camps. Sometimes I found signs that humans had been there, but never the humans themselves, as though they were ghosts. One day my search brought me to the second floor. This level was different from the first. There was more life, more species of monsters, more dangers, and more mysteries. I explored the area for several days. Then I made a mistake. I entered someone else's territory. At first nothing happened. Then a claw shot out of the darkness. I barely dodged. Deep grooves were carved into the stone wall. The next attack was even faster. Only my perception skills saved me. The attacker moved so quickly that it became a blur. The fight lasted several minutes. At last I managed to catch my opponent. I struck. The shadow crashed into a wall. And then I saw her. A cat girl. Thin, dirty, fierce, with two tails and feline ears. She looked at me as if she wanted to kill me. "Why did you attack me?" I asked. "Because this is my territory, meow." The answer was so ridiculous that I was momentarily speechless. After a brief conversation, it became clear she was not a mindless monster. She could think, joke, get angry, feel fear, almost like a human. Her name was Luna, though she disliked talking about herself. At first, our relationship could hardly be called friendship. It was more of a temporary truce. She thought I was strange. I thought she was unbearable. But gradually, we began traveling together. Luna knew the second floor perfectly. She showed me safe routes, warned me about dangers, argued constantly, and irritated me endlessly. To my surprise, I liked it. For the first time since my family's death, I no longer felt alone. One day, we encountered humans. Real humans. An armed party was moving through the tunnels. I was so shocked that I nearly approached them. Luna stopped me. "They'll kill you." "Why?" "Because you're a monster." The answer was simple and painful. To humans, I wasn't human. To monsters, I wasn't truly one of them either. For the first time, I felt just how alone I really was. But fate gave me no time to dwell on it. The second floor belonged to an ancient creature, the Hand of Medusa, a monster guarding the passage to the next level. Most considered it unbeatable. That didn't suit me. If the road to freedom led through it, then I would fight. Luna called me insane. She was probably right. Preparation took weeks. We hunted, trained, studied the terrain, and slowly grew stronger. But the greatest change wasn't our levels. We began to trust each other. Not completely, but enough. By the day of the attack, we were a team. The battle was a nightmare. The Hand of Medusa was enormous. His gaze turned creatures to stone. Every strike could kill. Several times I thought I had lost. Several times Luna saved my life. Several times I saved hers. We fought like madmen, because we knew there was nowhere left to retreat. Then, at the decisive moment, something happened that I never expected. Luna shielded me with her body. The attack had been meant for me. She took the hit. Her health dropped almost to zero. I looked at the wounded cat girl and felt fury. Not fear. Not despair. Fury. The same fury I had felt after my mother's death. At that moment, I realized something important. Luna was no longer a random companion. She had become family, and I refused to lose another family. I poured everything I had into my final attack. The Hand of Medusa collapsed. The second floor lost its ruler. We had won. After the battle, I used everything available to save Luna. When she finally woke up, the first thing she said was, "You look even uglier than usual." I laughed for the first time in a very long time. Then silence followed. Before us lay the passage to the next floor. Freedom was closer than ever. But unexpectedly, Luna asked a question. "When you reach the surface, what will you do?" I thought about it. The answer had once seemed simple. Live. Be free. Nothing more. Now everything had changed, because for the first time in this dungeon, I wasn't alone. "I don't know," I answered honestly. Luna nodded. "Then we'll figure it out together." We stood before the dark passage, not knowing what awaited us, not knowing that the third floor would change everything, not knowing that very soon we would meet beings capable of shattering everything we believed about the world. But at that moment, none of it mattered. For the first time in a long while, the future no longer felt empty. And together we stepped forward into the unknown. The third floor greeted us with death. Not monsters, not traps, the air itself. When Luna and I emerged from the tunnel, an icy wind struck so hard that I nearly lost my footing. Before us stretched an endless white wasteland. Sky and earth blended into one. It felt as though the world had ended, leaving behind nothing but ice. "I hate snow," Luna muttered. A minute later, she was already shivering. 10 minutes later, even I was trembling. Had it not been for another evolution that granted resistance to cold, we would have died on the very first day. That was the first warning. The third floor was unlike anything we had seen before. Too quiet, too empty, too perfect. The first weeks were spent simply surviving. We hunted ice wolves, ice birds, ice giants. But gradually I began to notice something strange. Whenever the monsters died, something felt wrong. There was no smell of blood, no real flesh. Sometimes the bodies simply crumbled into snow, as if they had never been alive at all. The thought would not leave my mind. The deeper we ventured into the frozen canyons, the stronger the feeling of wrongness became. One day I stopped beside a frozen human. He looked alive, but inside he was made entirely of ice. Then everything fell into place. These aren't monsters. What? Luna asked. They're copies. Copies of what? Living creatures. Even saying it felt unpleasant. If the entire third floor was filled with such creations, then somewhere there had to be someone creating them. And that someone had to be unimaginably powerful. We continued onward, day after day, week after week. Luna complained, argued, threatened to abandon me, yet she always stayed by my side. That was when I began noticing something else. She was no longer just a companion. I had grown used to looking for her, used to hearing her voice, used to her presence. We had become a family, and that frightened me more than any monster, because families die. I already knew that far too well. A few days later, we reached the center of the frozen canyon. She was waiting there. A gigantic ice bird sat upon a throne made of frozen bones. Her wings covered half the valley. Ancient sorrow glowed in her eyes. Beneath her rested the skeleton of a small phoenix. Is that the floor ruler? Luna asked quietly. I nodded. The system displayed a name, the Ice Empress. For the first time in a long while, I felt true fear, but it was too late to retreat. The passage downward lay directly beneath her throne. She opened her eyes. Why do you disturb my peace? I never expected her to speak. We talked for several minutes. She did not seem insane, nor evil, only incredibly tired. Gradually, her story began to emerge. Once she had a child. Once this floor had been a beautiful place. Once life had existed here. Now only ice and memories remained. Pitied her. But pity changed nothing. We had to move forward. The battle began, and for us, it ended almost immediately. Her first strike froze half the valley. The second nearly killed me. The third sent Luna flying dozens of meters away. For the first time, I faced a being whose power completely eclipsed ours. We lost. Completely. Without question. The last thing I saw before losing consciousness was Luna wrapped in chains of ice. When I awoke, she was gone. Panic came instantly. I searched for hours, without success. Then I found tracks. And then I met the being who would change the course of my life. He looked strange. Too calm. Too confident. Too old. The system revealed his name. Babylon. And at that moment, I realized I was standing before something far more dangerous than the Ice Empress. We spoke for a long time. Babylon asked questions, listened to answers, sometimes laughed, sometimes remained silent, as if evaluating me. Finally, I asked the only question that mattered. Where is Luna? He looked north. She's still alive. Just 2 words, but they gave me hope. Then Babylon told me the truth. The Ice Empress did not kill her victims immediately. She turned them into frozen puppets. Slowly, very slowly. As long as time remained, Luna could still be saved. Relief washed through me. Then came rage. Once again, I had lost someone close. And once again, I had been powerless. Babylon watched in silence. When my anger finally eased, he asked, "What are you going to do?" The answer came instantly. "Bring her back, even if it costs your life?" Yes. The old man smiled, as if that was the answer he had been waiting for. The following days were hell. I trained, hunted, killed, grew stronger. But for the first time, my goal was not leveling, not survival, not freedom. Luna. Every day I remembered her laughter, her stupid jokes, her endless complaints, and I realized something simple. If she died, I would never hear any of them again. 9 days later, I returned, this time alone. The frozen valley greeted me with an army. Hundreds, then thousands of ice creatures. All of them former inhabitants of the third floor. All of them now part of the Empress. And so I began destroying them, day after day, hour after hour. I burned through entire packs, shattered frozen armies, cleansed the valley. The Empress never tried to stop me. She watched, waited, as though she knew the real battle still lay ahead. When the last frozen monster fell into the snow, I marched toward her throne. Luna was there, imprisoned within a gigantic cocoon of ice, still alive, but with little time left. The Empress rose. "You returned. I came for Luna. You are too late." No, for the first time in my entire life within the dungeon, I was absolutely certain of my words. The battle began. A real battle. No compromises. No conversation. The sky split beneath our blows. Ice turned to steam. Snow melted and froze again. Both of us understood only one would walk away. Yet as the fight continued, I noticed something strange. The Empress was not protecting herself. She was protecting the throne. The throne beneath which the remains of her child rested. And then I understood. She was not fighting for power, not for territory, not for life. She was fighting for memory. That was what made her dangerous. And What made her tragic? The final strike decided everything. The Empress fell. The ice around us began to crack. The wind died. The world fell silent. Before her death, she looked at the skeleton of the small phoenix. I only wanted to preserve what I loved. I found no answer, because I understood her too well. She closed her eyes and never moved again. A few minutes later, Luna's icy cocoon shattered. She collapsed into my arms, weak, exhausted, but alive. For several seconds, we simply stared at each other. Then she said, "You took your time." I laughed, and for the first time in years, I felt relief. We had won, but victory brought questions. Too many questions. Why did Babylon know so much? Who created this world? Why did the Empress speak of the past as if it had been destroyed? And why did I increasingly feel that the dungeon hid something far more terrifying than monsters? A few days later, we left the third floor behind. A new path awaited below. A new level. New mysteries. I did not yet know that the fourth floor would change everything. That it would begin the story of the gods. The story of the Arkansas. The story of Leviathan. And a truth capable of turning the entire world upside down. Luna and I expected the fourth floor to be like the previous ones. Another level. Another boss. Another battle. We were wrong. The transition ended unexpectedly. After the frozen wastelands, we were greeted by silence. Not unsettling. Not dead. Just strange. Before us stretched a vast stone city. No inhabitants. No monsters. No sounds. Hundreds of towers rose toward the ceiling of the underground world. Wide streets vanished into the distance. Statues of unknown beings stood in the squares. It looked as though the residents had left only hours ago. In reality, no life had existed here for thousands of years. "I don't like this," Luna said quietly. I agreed. The longer we walked the streets, the stronger the feeling of another presence became, as if the city itself were watching us. We explored the ruins for days, and the more we discovered, the less we understood. Everywhere were traces of civilization. Not human, not monstrous, something else. The beings depicted in the murals looked both human and divine. They built cities, created machines, controlled forms of energy I had never seen before. On one wall, I saw an image of a colossal dragon. Thousands of beings stood before it. They were not worshipping. They were saying goodbye. For some reason, the scene filled me with unease. Several days later, we found a library. It was larger than any palace. Shelves stretched for miles, but the books had long since turned to dust. Only fragments remained. Most of the texts were unreadable, yet one word appeared again and again. Dozens of times, then hundreds. Arkansas, as if the entire city had been built around a single idea. Luna grew nervous. Maybe we should leave? We're too close. Close to what? I had no answer. We continued onward. On the sixth day, we reached the center of the city. A gigantic tower, the tallest structure I had ever seen in either of my lives. Its peak disappeared into the darkness above. Winged statues guarded the entrance. When we approached, one of them opened its eyes. Stone came alive. Visitors detected. The voice echoed across the square. Luna immediately prepared for battle. So did I. But the statue did not attack. It merely turned its head. Access denied. "Who are you?" I asked. "Guardian of the archive." After speaking, the statue froze once more. Yet the tower doors opened, as though inviting us inside. The interior was even stranger. Thousands of glowing crystals floated in the air. Hundreds of mechanisms still functioned after millennia. At the center hovered a sphere of pure light. As we approached, the light began taking shape. First a silhouette, then a face, then a figure. A tall man dressed in white appeared before us. Too perfect, too calm, too artificial. "Welcome to the archive," he said. "Who are you?" "The Archon of Memory." I sensed danger. Not the kind I felt around Leviathan or the Empress. A different kind. The danger of knowledge. The Archon studied us for a long time, especially me. Finally, he spoke. "Bearer of true sight." The words immediately put me on guard. "How do you know about truth?" "Because we created it." The world seemed to stop. Luna looked at me. I looked at the Archon. Only one thought echoed in my mind. What did he mean by we? The Archon invited us to follow him. Then he showed us the past. First came illusions, then entire visions of history. We saw the ancient world. It was beautiful, far more beautiful than anything that existed now. Cities stretched to the horizon. Seas sparkled. The skies were clear. Humans and monsters lived together. Not perfectly, but together. Then everything changed. A war began. Not between nations, not between races, but against something unknown. We saw armies, gods, dragons, heroes, and all of them lost. Again and again. "Who are they fighting?" Luna asked. For the first time, the Archon frowned. "The enemy." "What enemy?" "One you are not yet ready to know." I disliked the answer. The Archon was clearly hiding part of the truth. Yet what we had already seen was enough. The ancient world was dying. Cities vanished. Continents crumbled. Civilization collapsed. Then a familiar face appeared within one of the visions. Babylon, young, incredibly powerful, standing beside beings called gods. He was here. here. He was one of the creators of the final project. What project? The Archon looked directly into my eyes. The Arkansas. Something tightened inside my chest. The archive continued revealing history. We witnessed the construction of the dungeon. Gigantic mechanisms, ancient seals, powerful beings willingly entering its depths. And then I understood. The dungeon had never been built as a prison. It had been built as a shelter. That realization struck harder than any spell. My entire life I had dreamed of escaping. My entire life I had hated the place where I ended up. And now I was learning it might have saved the world. But why hide the truth? Why had Leviathan remained silent? Why had Babylon never explained anything? The Archon seemed to read my thoughts. Because knowledge is dangerous. The truth is always better than a lie. No, the answer came too quickly, too confidently. Sometimes the truth destroys worlds. After those words, the atmosphere changed. The Archon no longer appeared friendly. You have learned enough. We're not finished. Yes, you are. Light thickened around us. The crystals flared. The tower trembled. Luna cursed. I prepared for battle. The Archon raised a hand, and the world vanished. Instead of the archive, I stood in a familiar cave. My adoptive mother lay before me, alive, smiling, calling my name. For a moment, my heart wavered. Then I understood. An illusion, but one that felt real. Then came the hatchlings. Then Luna. Then everyone I had lost. The Archon used memories as weapons. Every strike targeted not the body, but the soul. Luna had fallen into the trap as well. I watched her speaking to someone invisible. Tears filled her eyes. The battle lasted a long time, perhaps hours, perhaps minutes. Eventually, I realized the truth. The Archon was not trying to kill us. He was trying to make us abandon the truth. Turn back. Surrender. That was when I made my choice. I refused. Refused to forget pain. Refused to reject the past. Refused to live within a lie. The illusions began to shatter, one after another, like glass. For the first time, the Archon's expression changed. Why? Because this is my life. That pain makes you weak. No, I remembered my mother, Luna, everyone I had lost. It makes me who I am. The archive fell silent. The light vanished. The tower became still. The Archon watched me for a long time. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Perhaps that is why the system chose you. He stepped aside. A new door opened at the center of the hall, the final sector of the archive. Inside was a map of the world, huge, detailed, and wrong. Half the world was missing, as though someone had torn it out of reality itself. Luna noticed first. Where are the other lands? The Archon was silent for a long time. Then he answered. They no longer exist. A chill ran down my spine. What destroyed them? The Archon looked at the map, then at me. For the first time, fear entered his voice. The thing that will one day return. The light began to fade. The archive was shutting down. Before disappearing, the Archon spoke his final words. Words that changed everything. You still think the dungeon is keeping you inside. He stared into the distance, as though seeing something terrible. In truth, it is keeping something outside. Then the Archon vanished. Forever. Luna and I stood before the map in silence. Neither of us was thinking about freedom anymore. Neither of us was thinking about escape. Because for the first time, a far more terrifying question had appeared. What exists beyond the Ark? And what will happen if it ever finds its way back? When we left the archive, the world no longer felt the same. Even the air seemed different. Not because we had escaped the dungeon. Not yet. But the path upward had stopped being a goal in the usual sense. We were no longer searching for freedom. We were searching for answers. And the closer we came to the surface, the stronger a strange feeling grew inside me, as if someone had been waiting for us to arrive here all along. The journey upward was longer than I expected. Ancient runes covered the tunnel walls. Sometimes the ground trembled beneath our feet, as if the dungeon itself did not want to let us go. Luna had grown quieter. Since the archive, she had changed more than after any battle. Her carefree nature remained, but now it was mixed with caution. Do you really believe the Archon? She asked one night. No, I answered. Then why keep going? I stared into the darkness ahead. Because he didn't lie completely. Luna clenched her teeth but said nothing. We both understood. If even part of the Archon story was true, then beyond the Ark awaited more than just a world. Something existed out there that the Ark itself had been created to withstand. Several days later, the tunnel ended. Not with another cave, not with another floor, but with light. We stepped onto the surface and froze. Before us stretched the golden continent. Cities shone beneath the sun like structures carved from crystal and white stone. Enormous bridges connected towering spires. Caravans moved through broad avenues. No dirt, no ruins, no panic. People smiled. Children ran through the squares. The air carried the scent of flowers, sea salt, and fresh bread. I expected ruins. I expected war. I expected fear. Instead, I found paradise. Beautiful, Luna whispered. For the first time in a long while, there was no sarcasm in her voice. Part of me wanted to believe we had been wrong, that the dungeon truly had been a prison, that the outside world was truly free, that everything we had endured was finally behind us. The people welcomed us without weapons, suspicion, or fear. They offered food, water, and clean clothes. They smiled constantly, too constantly. Everything about them felt too perfect. In the capital, we met the Supreme Regent Solarius. He looked like the embodiment of order itself. Tall, calm, impeccably dressed. His voice was gentle, his manners flawless. Even his guards seemed more like decorations than living people. "Welcome to the Golden Continent," he said. "You have spent a long time in isolation. You are now under the protection of civilization." Neither Luna nor I trusted him, but we had no reason for open hostility. Not yet. Solarius explained that after the ancient war, humanity had abandoned chaos, religious conflict, and what he called freedom that brings death. A strict social structure replaced them. Every child was evaluated, every adult assigned a role, every aspect of society regulated by the central system. "So you saved the world?" asked. Solarius smiled. "We made it livable." The answer was too smooth, too convenient. Luna loved the city, far more than I expected. She wandered through the streets, admired shop windows, touched flowers, listened to musicians in the squares. For the first time in her life, she saw a real sky instead of stone ceilings and frozen caverns. I could not blame her, but she was also the first to notice what others ignored. People rarely argued, rarely disagreed, rarely made decisions for themselves. They were happy, yet their happiness felt identical, manufactured, artificial. I started searching for answers, quietly at first, then more aggressively. Soon I found the first crack. A woman who should have remembered 2 children no longer remembered them at all. When I asked, she genuinely seemed confused. Her memory had smoothed over the emptiness. Later, I met a man who had once protested against the government. The next day, he smiled like everyone else and insisted he had been mistaken. The longer I watched, the clearer it became. The system did not merely govern society. It governed people from the inside. Luna was horrified when she realized it. "They control everyone?" she whispered. "It looks that way. Then what's the point of this paradise?" I did not answer immediately, because the answer was too ugly. The point was making sure nobody ever asked that question. From that moment onward, this ceased to be a story about returning home. It became a story about realizing that home can be another cage. We found the path to the central nexus a week later. Of course, Solarius knew what we were doing, yet he never stopped us. That was more unsettling than any guard. The central nexus lay beneath the capital, a colossal chamber filled with glowing crystals, radiant rings, and streams of information beyond description. Everything connected to everything else. Every citizen of the continent formed part of the network. Their emotions, preferences, fears, decisions, all flowed through it, and there we discovered the truth. The system did not merely stabilize society. It assigned people their roles, smoothed away conflict, removed dangerous impulses, altered memories, created a perfect society where nobody suffered and nobody was truly free. Luna stared silently at the streams of data. Finally, she spoke. "This is horrible." "It is effective," said a voice behind us. Solarius appeared without a sound. He did not look like a villain. That made him more dangerous than any villain. He genuinely believed he was right. "You see only the surface," he said. "When the world was free, it burned. When people chose for themselves, they started wars. When monsters gained power, they devoured one another. We removed chaos." "And removed choice," I replied. "Choice is a luxury for those who can afford mistakes," Solarius answered calmly. "The world cannot." At that moment, alarms erupted throughout the chamber. Not ordinary alarms. The first signal was low and deep, as though the air itself groaned. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. For the first time, Solarius lost control of his expression. "What is that?" Luna asked. The answer arrived on its own. A rift opened in the sky above the capital. Black, like a wound burned into reality. Something stepped through. Not a monster, not a human, not a god. Its body seemed made of emptiness itself. Its movements resembled the collapse of matter. It did not walk. It erased space as it approached. The people below did not even have time to scream. Several buildings simply vanished. Solarius turned pale. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "No," he whispered. "What is that?" Luna repeated. Slowly, Solarius looked toward the sky. "The first devourer." The words sounded like a death sentence. I remembered the map in the archive, the missing lands, the empty void carved from reality. I finally understood. It had never been a metaphor. They had truly come, or rather, they were returning. The devourer turned toward us. No eyes, no mouth, yet I felt it watching, and suddenly everything connected. The dungeon, the Arkansas Leviathan, the Archon, the history of the gods, the missing continents. Everything had been preparation for this moment. Not to save humanity, not to save monsters, but to delay something outside. While we stood there, another impact shook the capital. The protective dome cracked. Solarius finally spoke not as a ruler, but as a frightened man. "If it breaks through, the entire entire continent will be destroyed. Why didn't you tell us? Luna shouted. Because truth destroys control. For the first time, I realized he was not entirely a monster, just a man terrified of something beyond his control. But fear did not justify lies. The devourer took another step. The central nexus began to collapse. Solarius ordered the evacuation of the city. People flooded the streets in panic. Luna watched them and, for the first time in her life, did not know whose side she was on. Humans clung to a golden paradise that turned out to be a cage. Monsters had lived inside a cage that turned out to be an ark. And now both worlds were collapsing at once. I looked at the sky, then at Luna, then at Solarius, and I understood. There was no turning back. If we wanted to survive, we could no longer divide reality into inside and outside. We had to understand how to stop the devourers. And to do that, we might have to destroy the very system people had mistaken for salvation. As the rift above the capital blazed brighter, I stepped forward. Not toward freedom, not toward escape, toward war. After the appearance of the first devourer, the world changed. Not gradually, not over months, in a matter of hours. The Golden Continent, which had seemed unshakable only yesterday, saw true fear for the first time. People fled through the streets. Armies took up positions. Communication towers transmitted emergency signals across every region. And above it all, the rift remained, a wound in reality itself. The devourer vanished after a brief clash with the continent's defense systems, but the damage was catastrophic. Entire districts of the capital were erased. Hundreds of people disappeared without a trace. And that was only the beginning. 3 days later, a second rift appeared, then a third, then a fourth. Each new rift brought new creatures. They did not build armies. They did not conquer territory. They made no demands. They simply destroyed everything they touched. For the first time in the history of the Golden Continent, the central system began losing control. People asked questions. People argued. People were afraid. And the greater the fear became, the weaker Solarius's perfect model grew. I saw it with my own eyes. A world built on order was unprepared for uncertainty. But the greatest problem was not the devourers. People wanted someone to blame, and they found an answer quickly. Monsters. Rumors spread across the cities that the opening of the Ark had brought a curse, that the creatures from the dungeon had caused a disaster, that monsters were heralds of the end of the world. Within a week, the first attacks began. Against intelligent monsters, against refugees, against anyone who looked different. Luna watched it happen with increasing anger. One evening, she returned from patrol and silently sat beside me. What happened? She was quiet for a long time. Then she answered, "Today they burned a village." Who? Humans. After that conversation, I understood something. The coming war would not be only against the devourers. It would also be between the people who should have been fighting together. Over the following weeks, Luna changed. She had always followed me before. Now she increasingly made decisions herself. Monsters came to her, then humans, then entire groups of refugees. She listened, helped, protected. Without realizing it, she was becoming a leader. One day I asked her, "Do you understand what's happening?" "No." "Then why does everyone come to you?" Luna looked around the camp, at the fires, at the children, at the elderly, at monsters and humans sitting together. Then she quietly replied, "Because there's nowhere else to go." At that moment, I no longer saw a companion, or even a friend. I saw a future ruler. Meanwhile, the situation continued to worsen. The archbishop of the system seized power across several regions of the continent. He had once been one of Solarius's closest allies. Unlike Solarius, however, he never doubted himself. His solution was simple: more control, more restrictions, more power. He declared that only complete submission to the central system could save civilization. And millions agreed, because they were afraid. Fear always makes simple answers attractive. The archbishop began constructing a new order. Harsh, merciless, absolute. All intelligent monsters were declared potential threats. All dissenters became enemies of stability. Soon his armies advanced. Their first target was Luna's camp. When the scouts brought the news, the council lasted through the entire night. Some wanted to flee. Others wanted to fight. A few demanded revenge. Luna listened in silence. Then she stood. "If we start killing each other, the devourers won't have to do anything." The camp fell silent. "We will defend ourselves." "That's all?" someone asked. "That's all." Some looked disappointed. They wanted war. Luna offered responsibility. "That is always harder." At dawn, the archbishop's army reached the valley. Thousands of soldiers, war machines, magical platforms, an overwhelming force. The archbishop personally arrived for negotiations. He appeared calm, far too calm. "Hand the monsters over to the system." "No." "Then battle will begin." "Then let it begin." The archbishop studied Luna for a long moment. "Humans will never accept monsters." Luna answered immediately. "Then they'll have to learn." Minutes later, the battle began. It became the hardest conflict in the history of our alliance. Not because of the enemy's strength, because nobody wanted to kill. Intelligent beings stood on both sides. Every strike wounded more than flesh. It wounded the soul. I fought on the left flank, stopping war machines, protecting retreating soldiers, saving those I once called enemies. That was when I realized how much I had changed. Once, survival had been all that mattered. Now, it was the people around me. The battle lasted almost the entire day. By evening, the situation had become critical. The Archbishop intended to use the central nexus to impose complete control over the region. If he succeeded, thousands would lose their freedom of choice. Then Luna made the most dangerous decision of her life. She personally led a strike team and headed for the control center. I wanted to go with her. She refused. This is my battle for the first time, and I let her go. A few hours later, the fate of the world changed. Luna reached the nexus, destroyed the Archbishop's control, freed thousands from imposed restrictions, and won, not through force, through choice. When the battle ended, the people of the valley gathered together. Humans, monsters, refugees, soldiers, all of them looked only at her. Then someone spoke first. Queen of monsters. Then another. Then another. Within minutes, hundreds of voices repeated the title. Luna blushed, got angry, tried to protest, but it was too late. She had become a symbol, not through bloodline, through trust. For the first time in a long while, hope appeared, and that was when the bad news arrived. First came the scouts, then magical messages, then emergency signals. New rifts were opening across the entire world. Hundreds of them, not one, not 10, hundreds. Entire cities vanished within hours. Armies were defeated one after another. Even the central system could no longer predict events. The devourers were advancing. There were too many of them. We gathered a council. Every major leader attended. Solarius, Luna, alliance commanders, representatives of the monsters. Everyone reached the same conclusion. Victory was impossible through ordinary means. Then the doors opened. Without warning, without guards, without permission. A lone figure entered. Massive, ancient. The very air grew heavier around him. I recognized him immediately, though I had only seen him in murals, though I had only heard of him in legends. Leviathan, the last guardian. Absolute silence filled the chamber. Nobody dared speak first. Leviathan slowly surveyed the room. Then his gaze settled on me. There was no hatred in his eyes, no anger, only exhaustion, as if he had carried an impossible burden for far too long. Finally, he spoke. You wanted freedom. His voice was unexpectedly calm. Now look at what it costs. After those words, the chamber fell silent, and for the first time I understood. Our real story was only beginning. After Leviathan appeared, the world seemed to stand still. Humans feared him. Monsters feared him. Even those who had never seen the last guardian could feel the power radiating from him. But something else surprised me. He did not look like a conqueror. He did not look like a monster. He did not look like a tyrant. He looked exhausted, as if he had carried a burden that should have broken anyone else long ago. The council ended quickly. Nobody argued. Nobody tried to give orders. When Leviathan asked to speak with me alone, I agreed. We left the city before dawn. For hours we walked in silence, until we reached ancient ruins beside a black sea. There Leviathan finally stopped. You hated me. It was not a question. I nodded. Yes. And you wanted to kill me. Yes. Good. The answer was so unexpected that I was left speechless. Leviathan sat upon a broken column. Then you have earned the right to hear the truth. For the first time, I heard his story. Thousands of years ago, the world had been different. Cities stretched beyond the horizon. Gods walked among mortals. Humans and monsters fought, traded, and lived together. Life was imperfect, but it existed. Then the devourers came. First one, then several, then countless numbers. They did not conquer the world. They erased it. Continents vanished. Oceans became emptiness. Even the gods were powerless. Then the Ark was created, Leviathan continued. I already knew the word, but now I heard the true story. The Ark had never been built as a weapon, nor as a prison. It had been built as a final hope. Everything worth saving was placed inside. Humans, monsters, knowledge, history, the future. Who created it? Many gods, ancient dragons, the last heroes, and Babylon. The mention of my mentor made me tense. He helped create it? One of the last creators. The answer only raised more questions. But Leviathan continued. When construction ended, another problem emerged. Someone had to remain outside. Someone had to guard the gates. Someone had to hold back the devourers. That someone became Leviathan. Why you? He remained silent for a long time. Because everyone else had already lost too much. Those words stayed with me, not because they sounded heroic, because they sounded true. The following days became a journey through the past. Leviathan showed me ancient battlefields, ruins of fallen capitals, the scars left by wars between gods and horrors beyond reality. Gradually, I began to understand the scale of everything. All this time, Leviathan had never protected power, never protected a throne, never protected a system. He had protected the world at a terrible cost. lost, with brutal methods, but he had protected it. The more I learned, the more one question haunted me. If all this was true, why did nobody know? The answer came unexpectedly. From Babylon, he appeared one evening beside an ancient lighthouse, as calm as ever, as perfectly timed as ever. But for the first time, he looked tired. We sat in silence. Then he spoke. "You're angry with me." "Yes, you should be." He did not defend himself. "Why didn't you tell me?" Babylon gazed at the sea. "Because knowledge is worthless without understanding." "That's not an answer." "It is exactly the answer." I wanted to argue, but I knew him well enough. He never wasted words. Babylon revealed more of the truth. How the ark had been built. How the gods had died. How Leviathan had willingly accepted his burden. Then he spoke the sentence that changed everything. "We were never searching for the strongest." I frowned. "Then who?" "The one capable of making the better choice." At the time, I did not understand. Soon I would. Several days later, the supreme devourer appeared. Until then, I believed ordinary devourers were the true threat. I realized how wrong I had been. Compared to this creature, the others were insects. It was immense, ancient, impossible. Space itself collapsed around it. Cities vanished merely from its presence. Entire armies could not even approach. For the first time, I saw fear on Leviathan's face. Not fear for himself, fear for the world. The greatest battle in history began. Human armies, monster armies, the Free Alliance. Everyone fought together, and still they lost. The supreme devourer advanced, slowly, inevitably, like the end of the world itself. Then Babylon stepped forward, alone. I immediately understood what he intended. No, he looked at me and smiled, like a teacher, like a grandfather, like a friend. "Sometimes you only need to buy time. There has to be another way, perhaps, but not today." Babylon walked toward the devourer, one man against a being capable of ending the world. Before leaving, he spoke his final words. "Power was never the goal." He looked directly into my eyes. "We tried to raise someone capable of making a better choice than we did." Then he left. I never saw him again. Babylon died, stopping the supreme devourer. Not forever, only for a time, but that time was enough. After his death came the final chapter of Leviathan's story. He challenged me to battle, not from hatred, not from pride, not for power, as a test. "If you cannot defeat me, you cannot understand my choice." Those were his words, and I accepted. We met at the gates, where the border between the world and the void began. The battle lasted a day, then a night, then another day. For the first time, I fought not to survive, not to win, but to understand. Every strike revealed something new, about the world, about Leviathan, about myself. He was unbelievably powerful, but his will was stronger still. Thousands of years of solitude, thousands of years of responsibility, thousands of years of hatred from those he protected, and yet he never stepped back. Only then did I understand the true scale of his sacrifice. By the end of the second day, the outcome became clear. I had grown stronger, not only in body, in spirit. Leviathan understood it too. The final blow decided everything. He dropped to one knee. For the first time in millennia, I stepped closer. Leviathan looked at me. There was no defeat in his eyes, only relief. "Do you understand now?" I remained silent, because I did. At last, I understood. I was never guarding a cage. His voice became quiet, almost human. I was guarding those inside. After those words, the last guardian smiled and died. For several seconds, the world remained motionless. Then everything began. The gates trembled. The sky cracked. Fractures spread across the horizon. The system issued an emergency warning. Its voice echoed across every corner of the world. "Guardian status, absent. Barrier collapsing. 72 hours remain." I raised my head. Beyond the gates, something vast was moving. Not one devourer, not 1,000, an infinity. In that moment, I understood the true price of victory. My entire life, I had dreamed of defeating Leviathan. Now he was gone, and the entire world stood one step from extinction. Ahead of me waited a choice, perhaps the very reason all of this had happened in the first place. Guardian status, absent. Those words echoed in my mind for a long time. 72 hours. That was all the time remaining before the barrier collapsed completely. Leviathan was gone. Babylon was gone as well. The world stood at the edge of an abyss, and for the first time in my life, I no longer felt like a hunter. Only someone who had realized the cost of his dream far too late. After the death of the last guardian, the sky did more than darken. It shattered. Cracks spread across the horizon like burns across glass. Black light seeped through them, and within that light, shapes sometimes appeared. Not individual creatures, but endless masses, formless and infinite, as though the void itself was trying to take shape. Luna stood beside me, staring silently at the sky. Her title, Queen of Monsters, no longer sounded ceremonial. It had become reality. Humans came to her for guidance. Monsters came to her for protection. Refugees came to her for hope. She never sought power. She simply accepted the responsibility everyone else stepped away from. "Did Did you know? She asked quietly. No. Then why are you looking at it like that? I did not answer immediately, because I felt emptiness inside my chest. I had always wanted to reach the outside world, always wanted freedom, always believed freedom would solve everything. Now freedom lay at my feet, together with the destruction of everything I had come to love. Because I finally understand Leviathan, I said. Luna studied me carefully. And now we have to do something nobody has ever done before. Within 3 days, the world changed completely. The first devourers emerged through rifts across the continent. They did not attack like ordinary enemies. They erased everything they touched. Oceans vanished piece by piece. Cities collapsed without leaving ruins behind. Human and monster armies tried to resist, but it was like attempting to stop a storm with bare hands. Then something impossible happened. Humans and monsters began fighting together. At first reluctantly, then more often, then because they had no other choice. I watched former enemies protect one another. Humans pulled monsters from beneath collapsing buildings. Monsters shielded humans from devourer attacks. Where fear and hatred had existed only yesterday, something new began to grow. Not trust, not yet, but necessity. And necessity became the foundation of a new world. We established the final camp at the base of the ancient gates. Survivors gathered there from every corner of existence. Fragments of Solarius's armies, citizens of the Golden Continent, monsters from the dungeon, refugees from destroyed lands. Each carried their own truth, their own pain. Solarius arrived last. He looked different. The perfect ruler who once preached order now resembled a tired old man. His insignias were gone. Dust and blood stained his clothing. He stood beside a campfire for a long time before speaking. I was wrong. Nobody replied, not even Luna. Solarius looked toward her. I thought control could save the world. I thought removing freedom would protect people from themselves. Instead, I only made them weaker against what came. Luna did not appear victorious. It's too late to ask for forgiveness. I know, and he truly did. For the first time, he stopped being a ruler. He became a man forced to live with his choices. While the camp prepared for the end, I walked toward the gates, or rather, what remained of them. Darkness hung beyond the breach, but it was no longer silent. A rhythmic pulse echoed from the other side, as though something immense was knocking against reality itself. The closer I approached, the stronger the pressure became. This was the choice Leviathan had spoken of. Not abstract, not philosophical, real. If we did nothing, the devourers would destroy everything. If we sealed the gates through ordinary means, the barrier would still collapse. If we destroyed the system, the final defense would vanish. Only one path remained: become the new guardian. I did not want it. That was the first truth I admitted to myself. I did not want to spend eternity at a door. I did not want Leviathan's fate. I did not want to become a lonely figure feared and hated by everyone. But then I remembered my adoptive mother, standing between us and death. I remembered the hatchlings. I remembered Luna following me even when it was foolish. I remembered Babylon sacrificing himself to buy us time. I remembered Leviathan holding the door while the world called him a monster. And suddenly I understood. If I walked away now, all of it would have been meaningless. At that moment, Luna appeared beside me. She did not ask what I had decided. Apparently, she already knew. You're going to stay, aren't you? I nodded. She remained silent for a long time, then stepped forward and punched me in the chest. Not hard, but enough to take my breath away. You always choose the stupidest possible option. Is that a compliment? No, she turned away, then quietly added, but it's exactly why I keep following you. Something inside me broke and reformed at the same time. I can't take you with me. Luna turned sharply. I didn't ask. I'll be alone there. You've already been alone for too long. She stepped closer. I'm not losing you the way you lost everyone else. What if I become someone everyone hates? Luna looked directly into my eyes. Then I'll be the one person who remembers why you did it. Those words were stronger than any oath. We began preparing for the final ritual. Ancient arc mechanisms still functioned beneath the ruins. The archive provided maps of the surviving nodes. Solarius and his engineers rebuilt the central circuit. Monsters contributed energy from ancient bloodlines. Humans contributed knowledge of the system. Luna united everyone capable of working together. Nobody cared who was right anymore. Only one question mattered: who could keep the world alive a little longer? When everything was ready, I entered the heart of the system. It was quiet, far too quiet for a place that would determine the fate of the world. The heart was a colossal sphere of light and metal surrounded by thousands of luminous lines stretching in every direction. Each line connected to a world node. Cities, the dungeon, the gates, ancient temples, ruined regions where life still remained. This was more than a machine. It was the legacy of gods, dragons, heroes, and survivors. When I touched the core, voices filled my mind. Hundreds, thousands, the voices of previous guardians. Those who had held the door before me. Those who died so I could reach this place. voices, and among them I heard Leviathan. Not alive. A memory. You came, he said. Yes. You know what you've chosen. Yes. Then choose again. 3 paths appeared before me. The first, leave the heart and escape with everyone else, hoping the devourers would not arrive in time. The second, destroy the system entirely, bringing down the barrier and ending the cage forever. The third, accept the heart and become the new guardian. I already knew my answer, but the system would not release me so easily. One final illusion appeared. Earth, the sun, a sky without walls, fields, cities, a world where I could begin again. Luna stood beside me, smiling, holding out her hand. The vision was unbearable, because this time it was not a lie. It truly could happen, if I chose myself. I stood there for a long time, then remembered the most important lesson of all. Freedom without responsibility is destruction. I stepped back and chose something greater than myself. The heart responded instantly. Light exploded around me. The pain felt like being torn apart and rebuilt from different material. I heard bones breaking and reforming. Power pathways shifted. Ancient formulas, forgotten maps, divine memories, and lost voices flooded through me. Then silence ended. I saw everything, not with eyes, all at once. The gates, the devourers, the barrier, the world, every crack, every point of resistance, every living soul. And in that moment I understood what Leviathan meant. Guardian was never a title. It was a state of being, a choice. While the heart absorbed my strength, the final battle began outside. The supreme devourer reached the gates. Luna led the allied armies. Solarius coordinated the defenses. Humans and monsters stood shoulder to shoulder. Nobody asked where anyone came from anymore. Everyone looked in the same direction, toward the abyss. When the devourer struck the barrier, I answered from within. Not as a monster, not as a human, as the new Leviathan. The world trembled. Power surged through me into the barrier, stopping blow after blow. Outside, the armies slowed the supreme devourer, but only temporarily. It was too vast, too ancient, too empty. Then Luna climbed the central platform and shouted, "Hold the line!" Even those standing on the edge of death heard her voice, and somehow the world endured. Not because of one hero, not because of one monster, but because everyone chose to stay. The battle lasted a long time, far too long, but by dawn, the supreme devourer began to retreat. Not because it had been destroyed, because for the first time the world fought back, and that was enough to win life. When silence finally returned, people raised their heads. Some cried, some laughed, some simply sat on the ground, unable to believe they were still alive. And I remained on the other side of the new boundary, at the gates, where Leviathan had once stood. Now I stood there, but unlike him, I was not truly alone. Luna came to visit every year, then every decade, then whenever she could. Generations passed into the new world. Humans and monsters slowly built something together. Not paradise, not perfect order, real life. Sometimes people saw me as a monster, sometimes as a legend, most often as a shadow, and that was fine, because I knew what stood behind that shadow. One day, a very old Luna appeared at the gates. Silver fur touched her temples. Her steps were slow, but her mocking smile remained unchanged. She sat beside me and gazed toward the distant world. After a long silence, she asked, "Are you still guarding the door?" I smiled. "And are you still visiting me?" Luna snorted. "Someone has to make sure you don't get arrogant." We both fell silent. Ahead lay the new world. Behind us stood the old cage, and between them stood me, not the rejected, not a savior, not a hero. Leviathan, the new guardian, the new choice of the world, and perhaps the first being who truly understood the price of freedom.